Well, welcome everyone to our next video in a series on switch assessment. We are now going to begin to look at specific potential switch sites where we can place a switch. And I tell you, when it comes to switch assessment, it's all about location. We need to definitely consider the switch type, and we'll look at that, but the location is really quite critical before we match that with the best switch type. So we're going to follow a rough hierarchy as we look at our options, and we're going to start with options by the hand. My name is Michelle Lange. I'm an occupational therapist in the Denver, Colorado area, and I'm a bit of a switch geek. I do a lot of switch assessment with the clients that I serve, and I hope this information is helpful to you and the clients that you serve. Let's get started. So in this series, we're looking at switch assessment, and in our first video, we talked about criteria that we need to keep in mind to determine the best switch location. So I would encourage you to check out that video if you haven't yet done so. Today, we're going to start our hierarchy of potential switch locations with placements by the hand. So by the hand, we can place a switch in a horizontal location, like in this picture here with this young man. We can place it vertically up on its side, underneath a tray, using something called proximity switches. We can capture very small finger movements, as well as a pincher or grasping movement. So let's take a further look at each of these options.
Good job.
Good job, Landon. This is Landon.
Drive to Dad.
I'm going to pause this video for just a second. Landon is a 5-year-old boy, and he has cerebral palsy, and he already had a power chair with a joystick, but it was hard for him to drive. So we've put him in an evaluation chair, and we have positioned 3 switches on a tray horizontally. 2 of these are from Stealth Products. They're called egg switches. Those are the black switches. And 1 is from AbleNet. And it's a spec switch, and that's the red switch, and it's for right. Now, as you watch Landon, you'll see that he repeatedly goes for that red switch because it's easier to activate, and he'd rather move than not move at all. Again, watch carefully. You'll see that several times he goes for those black switches, but they're just too difficult for him to control.
Dad, you're going forward. Good. Where's Dad? Did you see him?
Okay, stop. Good boy.
Good stopping.
No, stop. There you go.
Now you're turning. Are you going to see Ginny instead? With the trucks?
What are you going to do?
You see, oh, do you want to, well, we had talked to him about the basketball before. He might want to make a basket.
Okay, I know, that was the easy
This
one.
one? Too much interaction. Too much.
Yeah,
Gotta let him on his own.
distraction.
But here, Jimmy, look what I just got. Take the pictures. How you do that. So it's just showing the different switches that he's trying to get. Yeah, it's just showing he's deliberately.
Those switches are just too hard. So I went out to my trunk of my car and pulled out 2 more spec switches, but by that time we were unable to keep videoing the session. He did very well, and he drives with switches rather than a joystick at this time. We can also place a switch in a vertical placement, and this allows us to eliminate a plane of movement. So if we place a switch horizontally, the client has to move over the switch, let me find my hand here, and go up and over the surface of the switch. And that can be hard, especially those vertical movements for people with muscle tone. By placing the switch on its side, now my client only has to move horizontally. They don't have to get up and over the surface of the switch itself. Now, this particular switch from Enabling Devices has suction cups on the bottom. They don't hold their position terribly well, but there's mounting hardware available for the edge of a tray or an armrest to allow us to place a switch in this orientation in relation to the client, again, eliminating a plane of movement. Another way of eliminating a plane of movement is to take switches and put them under the surface of a tray. Well, how does that work? Well, proximity switches are a capacitive switch. And in layman's terms, because I am not an electrical engineer, these can detect our capacity to conduct electricity. So my hand over the surface of the tray will activate the proximity switch, but the surface of the tray will not. And so these can be placed under the tray, again, allowing the client to simply use horizontal movements, eliminating the requirement of vertical movement to get up and over the surface of the switch. Now the client needs to know where these switches are hiding. This tray on the right is from Stealth Products. It's hollow. It's called the Eclipse tray, but it's solid. I can't see where the switches are. Now some folks will put stickers on a tray like you see in the lower left. My clients really like stickers a lot, and they tend to look at their stickers instead of up and where they're going in their power chair or at their communication device. So I will take Velcro, the soft side, the loop side, and place it on top of the tray to indicate where each switch is. And that way the client is aware of that. They can feel that tactile cue. They know they're within the activation range of that switch, and they don't have to look down at the tray. Now we can use switches to capture even smaller movement. Proximity switches are an electronic switch, and they do not require force. We just have to get within the proximity of this capacitive switch. Fiber optics are electrical switch too. They do not require force. They do require travel, but a very small amount of travel, much smaller than the proximity switches. On the left here, we've taken a fiber optic switch and we have placed it through the hand pad of an older style Autobach arm trough. These are no longer available, the Autobach products. And on the right, we've taken a fiber optic and placed it within a custom arm trough. So on the left, Julian, who has SMA type 1 and as a result muscle weakness, can use very, very small thumb movements to activate this switch. On the right, Fareed, who also has SMA type 1, needs to have the switch in a slightly different orientation because he's pulling back with his finger. Notice that by placing the switch in this location, his finger flexors are not stretched, they're relaxed, and this allows him to better use this movement. He can no longer use the movement that Julian does on the left. His fingers have to be in this position to allow that flexion to activate this switch. Now in the next slide, we're going to watch Fareed using this same type of switch in bed. He spends quite a bit of time in his bed and needs to access his communication device. So we made a second custom arm trough that sits in his bed with him rather than being mounted to a wheelchair. The reason is it keeps his hand in the precise orientation to this fiber optic switch that's required for him to access it consistently and accurately. He's very, very good at it. You'll notice a red light in the video. We can't pick up this red light with our eyes, but my camera can. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear a slight click as he activates the switch.
Perfect, Fareed. I like how you're moving towards that.
So it looks like he's actually touching the switch because his finger is right at the edge of that red light right now. He's within the activation zone, but the switch itself actually starts further in, right at the edge of that arm trough. He just has to approach it. That beam of light is reflected back, and that's what activates the switch. Here we have another means of capturing finger movement. On the left, we have a microlight switch, which is a very sensitive mechanical switch, so some force is required, and it's mounted to a gooseneck, and this young man can extend his finger slightly to activate the switch. And here on the right, this young lady here has an older style universal switch mount. It's called the Slim Armstrong. It's not made anymore. And we had it temporarily mounting a microlight to capture her very small movement. You can see that we also needed to put a forearm strap on to keep her in alignment with the switch. Eventually, after the evaluation, we ordered an arm trough that better supported her arm in alignment with the switch and a more permanent switch mount. It was a gooseneck style that attached to the bottom of her armrest. This gentleman here already had a switch sight by the side of his head that he used for his communication device. But he received these custom arm supports from Aspen Seating because his wrists had very little extension and they would collapse over each other on his tray, and it was uncomfortable for him. So this custom support was present at both sides of his body, each arm. Once he was supported in this position, we noticed that he could extend his wrist slightly. So we placed a switch there on some hardware that's typically used to mount seating components on a wheelchair, and he was able to use this for recreational activities. We can also use a switch to capture a pincher sort of movement. Now, the challenge with using these pincher type switches, such as the one pictured on the right from enabling devices, is that if the client isn't actively pinching the switch, they might drop the switch, and it's hard to keep it within their hand. What I use sometimes as an alternative when I'm trying to capture this sort of movement is what you see on the left. This is Faith, and she has a spec switch from AbleNet that's on a strap base. So we've wrapped it around her hand, and she's using a grasping sort of movement, but we can place that switch so that it's more in a location to capture a pinch as well. And when she is not activating it, it stays in location within her hand because of that strap. There are a few switches out there that are designed to capture a grasping movement, and these are actually a pneumatic switch. There's air that moves within the switch. There's a couple of these on the market, like this one from Enabling Devices. The challenge again with these switches is that when the client isn't grasping it, they may drop it, and then they've lost the ability to use their switch. And some clients, if they have a lot of tone in their hand, might have difficulty releasing that switch, and that can impact their ability to use it well. So thank you very much for attending this particular video here on switch locations around the hand and the fingers. I hope it was helpful, and I hope you can join us for our next video in the series. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this webinar. For more information on the ATP Education Program, please visit our website at atp.nebraska.gov or email us at atp.education@nebraska.gov.